Good day, or whatever time of the day you have. It's January 12th, 2022. It's the first, I think it's the first meeting this year, right? Second. Second. Welcome everybody. It's a SIG Node CI subgroup meeting. We are here. We have some agenda. Let's kick it off. I don't know who put this first name item to agenda.
I think that one was carried over from last time.
Yeah, I think so. Oh yeah, we discussed it, the issue on the board, and we decided that we want to discuss test naming consistency. Okay, so we need to decide, like, I think, first of all, we need to decide what our goals are for name consistency. I think what SIG testing wants is don't make impression that we test every platform.
Yeah, so I know that Ben had talked about he definitely did not want to see us include OS name in the test job names, and I think that's fine. That makes sense to me. But I don't know necessarily about taking that as far as not including the container runtime, because I think that'll just be really confusing. Like, I can definitely say, like, we don't need to say, like, Fedora, systemd driver, cryo test, but like, maybe at least put like cryo in there. No, it's not containerd. Because I think at a glance, that sort of thing is going to be useful to be able to see. And I think we're only running tests on containerd for the majority of our coverage, and then cryo to ensure that we get systemd driver coverage. So like, our goal is not we want to test every single container runtime and every single platform. It's we want at least 2 container runtimes. We want to ensure that, like, I guess the standard C group driver and the systemd C group driver both get tested, and we're kind of splitting that across containerd and cryo right now.
Yeah, I have, my only reservation is if we have 2, then like, what do we do about the CRI Docker-D? Do we need to test it as open source community, or like, does it need to be tested separately?
That's almost certainly not in our purview, right? So in theory, like, they could do the fun thing where like there's a way for them to like get a bucket, add the bucket to the test grid config, like yeet test results into the bucket, and then our test grid will display them, but like, we're not responsible for running those tests. Those are the responsibility of the downstream project. There's some, like, I guess there's like a little bit of weirdness over time. For example, like cAdvisor, which is like a Google project. It's not a SIG Node project, although it has a lot of involvement from SIG Node. I believe like cAdvisor is using Kubernetes CI right now, but like, I think that SIG testing wanted that to change. So there's like some weird cases like that, but generally, like, Kubernetes CI is for Kubernetes projects only. Like anything else, there are ways for them to like get that into our test grids, like via that weird buckety approach that I previously mentioned. So,
I mean, obviously, all the tests are defined by people willing to contribute and maintain this test. Because like, if like some other runtime will come and say they want to be tested, and there is enough justification, enough contributions, maybe it's a good thing to do. The worst case is, I think that's what happened with some OSs, like if nobody supports and like tests get read and nobody pays attention, that we need to just remove it and assume that nobody cares about this platform. I think CRI and containerd is good enough. One question would be, I think release blocking tests, they need to be, I don't know whether we need to include container runtime and release blocking names. I think release team may just have the generic names, and maybe we on SIG Node tab, we can have containers, declared container name in a test.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should talk about like in those cases, like it's not so much this is the specific runtime we're testing, but rather like this one tests the C group driver, this one tests the systemd C group driver, or like things like that, which are more like, I assume that like SIG release might care more about coverage than they do about specific container runtime. Another question that I would have, I think we have some data on this, right, Sergey? Where we asked, how do we decide which two to test? We have some data in terms of like what runtimes people are using, right? And I think it's like majority containerd, like, and not including Docker ship, majority containerd followed by cryo, and then everything else is like teeny tiny buckets. So I mean, that's potentially also a data point to consider there as well. Like, we don't want to, test teeny tiny, like 1% of our users use this runtime in like upstream Kubernetes CI, because it's not going to come up in the majority of CI scenarios. Like, I'm thinking of, I don't know, like I would assume a project like Kata, for example, or like Knative, they've got their own CI and they're going to be testing on their own. Like, that's not going to be happening as part of upstream Kubernetes repos. I hope you're.
Yeah, one different observation would be, how do we make sure that the name is not degraded? So name still reflecting what container name is used. With, I mean, when we've been migrating from Docker shim, it was always a challenge to, like, you see a name of a test that is generic enough, and you never know which container name it is, and it's really hard to understand. I think it may have been a temporary issue because we've been removing one of the runtimes. Okay, so what other things we need to change in names? One question would be, do we need to distinguish SIG Node end-to-end test and I mean folders into/e/node and into_node? Would this be something that we need to do in test names? Because there is an inconsistency how it called, like we call it node features and not into E2E features. Are they the same?
Oh yeah, sorry, the naming scheme, well, so for no, because look, one of those is 1.4, which is
I just realized that. Yeah.
One of the things I think that one of the things that actually brought this up last meeting was like just the scheme of the names for each of the jobs in Node CI. Like, they're all kind of subtly different. And I think that was a thing that we wanted to reconsider, like what the format of each test name is supposed to look like and how to make that consistent. Because right now, there's containerd on core OS and container OS, like the COS stuff, and like they have one naming scheme, and then there's like all the different versions of containerd that have a different naming scheme, and then there's a cryo test which have a different naming scheme, and so on and so forth.
I think we need to list all the small individual pieces of a name, and then we can come up with a schema. So we have OS, container time version. We have what being tested, like features, serial. Then we have specific feature name.
So I guess here's a question. I feel like, at least right now, only containerd is doing the thing where in the upstream Kubernetes tests, we're like testing a big version skew of containerd. Is that something that we want to do? Or because like the point is not, does every single, matrix config work? It's just, we need to make sure that it works on some version. I would kind of assume that we would only run the tests on the latest version of containerd, and containerd would be responsible for testing version skew.
It's an interesting question, because I think if you look at the statistics of usage of different container runtimes, and individual containerd versions may beat CRI-O. So it may make sense to cover some of them for our end users because it doesn't take too much effort generally. But we definitely need to limit it to specific, to supported versions only, because containerd is also quite aggressive in not supporting runtimes, and we don't need to go beyond what supported by containerd itself. This is for sure. I think it's 2 versions of maybe 3.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, like from my perspective, like, you know, I think that the percentage of users that we have on a given platform, that's not the only signal we're looking at, right? Like containerd 1.4 versus 1.5 are not very different compared to, say, like containerd and like a version of CRI-O or something like that. If we're focused on coverage as opposed to like not trying to anticipate every single version skew kind of thing, then like I would expect that we wouldn't be doing that in the upstream Kubernetes tests. So that's mostly why I bring that up.
Yeah, I think we caught quite a few problems with version skew, but this may be something to consider. Yet again,
it would be super good to have those examples because I did not know that. I, as far as I'm aware, have not seen those tests necessarily catch anything that was not like, that was like Kubernetes specific, like a Kubernetes bug. So
yeah, it was mostly containerd issues, like what containerd did.
Yeah. So like, see, I would say that that's not the job of Kubernetes CI, right? Like Kubernetes CI should not be demonstrating to containerd that containerd isn't working right. Like that should be containerd CI's job.
Yeah. Again, there is a fine line between like whether containerd shim is like CRI shim in containerd is something that we want to test and we own, or it's containerd owns it. Because I think philosophically, when everything started, CRI and CRI shim in containerd was owned by SIG Node. Now it's changed because we have less intersecting kind of contributors. So maybe we need to change the approach now. Okay, so coming back to this question, do we need to distinguish these tests different in a name, or we fine?
If we are distinguishing those right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you how.
Yeah, me too. That's a problem. Like I wonder whether we need to include it into the test name, so it will be easier to understand what's going on. Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, the test naming obviously in tree is very confusing as well. I would maybe recommend that we call it like node only or something like that, given that like the node E2E tests don't spin up a full cluster.
Okay. I'm trying to understand whether we have any other pieces in a name of a test that we need to reflect into naming scheme. So cgroup v2 will be feature, specific feature that is enabled, I think. Similar to huge pages. Okay.
Yeah, or like swap is another one possibly.
Okay, I don't see any other. CI.
Yeah, like node problem detector is a totally separate project.
So I see CI prefix on some test, which indicates that it's built.
Some of them might be it might just be a display thing. Like I think that we typically use CI dash in the actual spec. Like when we set up a periodic job, we normally prefix them CI for periodics, and then poll or PR sometimes for the pre-submits. But sometimes in test grid, we don't actually display that because it gets super long. So we'll like rename the tab.
Yeah, sometimes you don't remove this prefix. I think I saw pool many times. Yeah. Pool container dbuild.
We have a whole pre-submit tab now, right? Oh yeah, it's on the far right.
Yeah, it's kind of abandoned.
Yeah, so a bunch of these are PR, not poll. So it's inconsistent. And I think that this is a really good discussion. This might be something that we want to get wider feedback than just the folks who attend this meeting. Is this something that we want to attend, or we want to send an email to like the whole SIG Node mailing list, or maybe just like the SIG Node test mailing list? Like, I don't want to make big changes to this when then somebody's like, oh, I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah, so if we do that, do we, like, how do we distinguish these two tests? So OS name will be just the feature then, right?
Yes, I'm not actually sure
in this
what's
specific
up
case
with those two tests. Like, I know that there are at least 2 rel tabs that I need to delete because they're just like not.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember from last conversation. Yeah, from last week.
It's not that one, but yeah, it's something else.
Okay, so out of these prefixes, yeah, you just need to list them in a sequence. How did you call orphaned? New name? I think you renamed orphaned to something else. Abandoned?
Unlabeled.
Unlabeled.
They're not abandoned. They're not orphans. They have parents. Like, good God, it's such a depressing thing to call a test. Like, very insensitive, I think. I don't know who came up with that naming scheme. Anyways, I called them unlabeled because that is like the most accurate and descriptive way to say what the state of those tests are. They're missing labels, so they're not getting pulled in by other dashboards. So yeah, I called them unlabeled. There they are. They're beside container de-eviction.
Yeah.
They appear to be passing, although I don't know if there are any that are actually unlabeled. So yeah, there's a few.
Okay. Okay, I can reply to this issue. I think we want to keep prefix as prefix. Then
I think that we should definitely keep them at least for like the job names themselves. I think we may choose to not display that in the test grid dashboards. Like we may chop it off, but like I don't think it's necessarily like that doesn't really make any difference.
okay. Do you want to take it back to the issue and discuss it there, and then send an email to test infra? Assigned. I can assign myself.
Yeah, sounds good. I know we had a new contributor, I think, look at that one and ask how they could help. And we hadn't put a lot of info in there because we were kind of using it more as a tracker for us. So now we can maybe put in some of the discussion.
Up next, Tao. Tao, do you want to speak up? Tell us about this.
Yes, last week we are using the doc and with a lot of bullet points to check those test failures. And I think it's a little bit a toil. And so I created this spreadsheet to help us check those test results. And for instruction to use it, every week we create a new tab, and we go to each row of those test grid and confirm the test is passing. And if not, we can compare if it's caused by the known issue or it's not. And if it's not caused by a known issue, we can create an issue to track it. And that's a proposal. Any questions or objections?
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. I like. I really want to see continuation of our effort, because we look at test grid every week. I mean, we didn't look at test grid before during the meeting, but now we start looking at it more often to track the status. And I want to see continuation here. What do you think of like merging the tabs into single one and like see green dots accumulating over time? So date will be here.
One thing I would add to this is, I think like in theory, we shouldn't have to be like manually chasing down all of these reds, right? And the main reason that we have to do that right now is just because we have so many test failures. But like in theory, test grid can alert us, and like it sends us emails to the SIG Node test failures mailing list. I don't know that everything is currently set up to properly alert right now, but in theory, like I think that is the goal of those alerts. So there may also be some work here, like with test grid and Prow. Like we may want to reach out to SIG testing and ask them for help, because we just don't necessarily know how to use this software to the best of its like abilities. There's so much documentation for it, but like I know it's definitely sending us emails right now about some failing tests. And like if we're already talking about like, well, let's write some automation to help us to like, or like let's put this in a spreadsheet to help us track this because it's a lot of toil, I would say, well, hold on, the platform in theory also has some stuff to reduce that toil, so maybe let's try to use that.
Yeah, I got you.
I guess another good thing for this tracker would be we can keep track of issues that we create for these failures, and we don't have to create duplicate issues for these failures. And we can even keep it as an historic record, because I believe test grid only keeps results for 30 days or something around that.
Yeah, one of the point here was track continuation over the year, like how long it took us to resolve issues. Like once grid became red and we have an issue created, how long do we keep this issue around? And this will help us understand whether the job is abandoned. If nobody cares about this failure, then we can make a decision, and like especially before release, we can understand whether it was broken all the way or it was just recently started failing. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I just want to say I think
it's
very... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say it's also, I think, very valuable, just because even if we get alerts or something like that, I think the problem's not necessarily knowing if the test's failing or not, but rather like if someone is doing something about it or what's the status of it. And right now that kind of requires going into the test grid, searching the job name, hoping that the GitHub issue title kind of matches the job name, right? So if we just have a single place we can look at that, I think that'd be super useful.
Is that not covered by the CI board and the issues assigned right now for like failing tests?
Not always. I don't know. Like, I think if you could tie back into test grid and exact job names, that would be helpful. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters as much if it's like a single sheet or, on GitHub we have a board. Just as long as everyone's using the same thing and that we have a single place to go, I think that's the most important thing.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. I just, want to encourage us to use the things that people so painstakingly built. And I know that there's a lot of folks at Google, I think, working on that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
I agree. It's only a short-term solution as a helper to help us tracking those test failures. When the test grid are more stable in the future, we can remove those tracker. So we can use the same automated to track those, like 1 or 2 failures a week. But today, there are probably too many, and every time we go to the test grid, I'm kind of confused and don't know the history of it. And probably it's kind of the nature from the test grid. It's tracking too many things.
It certainly is. Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would recommend here is maybe engage a little bit with SIG testing on this rather than just kind of setting out in our own direction.
Is there a way to configure test grid that so in order that it creates issues whenever it detects failures or flakes? That would be also a very good tool.
I think so.
There is a workgroup reliability that Wojtek is driving, and this workgroup has a document describing like all the improvements we may do across test grid to help us, and mapping of issues to test grid plus creating issues automatically is one of the ideas they pursued. And I think somebody started working on that. I believe somebody from Intel, but then they stopped. So I mean, ideally, it should be integrated into test grid. And I know that test grid has these capabilities. It's just not integrated with GitHub, maybe necessarily. I think we can start, like try to iterate on this board and see if it's helpful. It's otherwise, like I posted this list of issues from last time, and it will be interesting. Like, I mean, it will be much nicer if instead of testing these grids after issue is solved, we just see green now, and like we see like so period of time when it's red, like maybe it was 1 week it's red and next week it's already fixed. So it will be good indications that we saw the failure, created issue, it got resolved. We get back to green. It will be interesting to see.
Yeah, but the question who will update this document, it's like it's additional work for someone. Because I know that for a lot of jobs we just got, like we get email notifications regarding to it. At least I'm looking for ones related to resource managers and Hug pages. Like if it's have more than 3 failures in the row, it will notify you via email that you have such thing.
Yeah, that was the thing that I was talking about earlier, Artyom.
Okay, sorry, I missed it. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it's no problem. No, I think this is a really good discussion, and I want to thank Tao for like taking the initiative to try to put together something better to track this stuff. This is, to be clear, like this test grid monitoring. I think this is a new initiative this year, and I also want to thank Sergey for kicking it off and putting it together, because previously I think most of our test grid monitoring has been very like, oh, Alana looked at test grid today and found something failing, or Matthias looked at test grid today, or Mike looked at test grid today. So this is definitely better, and I appreciate everyone coming together and trying to work on this as a group, and I definitely hope that we can get more of our test green. That would be awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately it will be a little bit fluid first few weeks when we renaming stuff, but then it should be coming together.
Yeah, I think if we break the world, we should try to do that as like seamlessly as possible before everybody complains at us.
Okay. Any more questions on that? Let's try to iterate. I see, or like somebody already made the change to track it over time. This is cool. Anyway, okay. Next one is somebody reported 2 more test jobs that are still using Docker. It's in release master and forming. One of this GPU with device plugin. I think we, I'm not sure what this does, because we supposedly remove the GPU tests. I think this
It's
entire job
erroring.
might.
What's going on with that? Can you
Well,
click on one?
the error is Docker shim. Docker shim is missing.
Oh,
but-
I see.
Yeah, once we fix the Docker shim, I wonder if it will run any test because we removed the GPU tests. So that may be. Maybe instead of fixing to containerd, we can just remove this entire thing altogether. Just needs to look in details. And this one, I think it just needs to be changed to containerd. But I don't know, does anybody know the reason this test is here? Is it end-to-end like node test?
I don't know what that test is. It looks like it's owned by cloud provider.
Yep, it's in cloud provider folder. Which one is it? I think I may be looking at the wrong one. Oh, okay. It's just conformance tests over.
Oh, and it's running on Docker too. We could probably just delete
Yeah.
that test.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. Do we need this test or we can delete it? Because I don't know what other differences it has with
Maybe
with
reach
what we
out
test.
to Lubomir about it or something. I assume that that might be something in their SIG. Yeah, but definitely we should tag cloud provider. This is not us.
Okay. Does anybody want to take a lead on this?
I think one we're just going to delete, and the other cloud provider can decide if they want to delete. So
Are both of them are cloud provider?
I think only I'm not sure if the first one was cloud provider. This
No, it's
the
sig
second one
release
definitely was.
manager master plugin. Wait, one of them. We close all the tabs. I got lost on them.
Oh, they're both owned by cloud provider. Yeah, maybe.
Cloud provider here. Yeah, post cloud provider.
I guess that's probably why we didn't migrate them, because we migrated everything else off Docker, but we wouldn't migrate other SIG's tests off of Docker.
If I do a quick code search in test infra, there is also one in SIG storage and several in SIG release. SIG release is the old.
The SIG release, it might be okay as long as they're
Yeah,
older
it's the old
branches.
branches, but the one in SIG storage is also GCE config.
Does anybody want to take a lead and drive this and like ping proper people?
I think let's wait for cloud provider to look at this.
Okay, I will make a comment about GPU tests. Okay, let's see if Cloud Provider will take it. And we're moving to the next item. Mike, you up?
Okay. So this was initially detected, I think, last week on the swap Ubuntu job failing. And then I noticed that this is an issue that's been happening for a while now. This is not recent.
Is it the same failure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was an app armor failure, which was related to a change somebody submitted without proper testing update. But this one is different. This is, yeah, that's the same one. Well, that's for Fedora. This is for Ubuntu.
Yeah,
But
the reason I ask is because
Mhm.
that test, for whatever reason, is very flaky. And I think like David can attest, we will often fix like it's failing on a job and it's failing for a particular reason. Then we look at another job, it's failing for a different reason, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to make sure we confirm that the reason that it's failing is the same.
Yeah, I guess it's the same reason. Yeah, and I think a couple of like some time ago, somebody suggested to just increase the timeout period that they have, but I don't think if that's the proper solution for this.
Do you have any more details on what needs to happen?
So, well, I mean, the suggestion some time ago somebody did was like just increase the timeline. I mean, increase the timeout period that they have for some of the checks. I think it's for 90 seconds, and they suggested to double it, but I don't think this is the solution. I don't think it's documented there.
Yeah, for the stats summary stuff, we've been hunting down those errors for a while now, but I think it's been more frequent for some reason in the swap job for whatever reason. Like I have seen in other jobs, but I think we did some improvements to the test, and I haven't seen it as much. But the swap job for some reason is especially sensitive too.
Maybe just because swap is like performance is slow.
Perhaps, yeah. Yeah, maybe what would be a good good thing to try is try to bump the timeout and run this test locally. I don't know, say 10, 15 times or something, and see if it flakes. I think just, I mean, you know, if that helps, then it's worth doing. That's just an experiment.
Do you mean bump timeout down and run locally, or up?
My understanding was up because it basically continues querying the summary API in the test like some number of times, and if it doesn't get a result after some timeout, it basically quits.
I mean, if you bump in timeout up, then we can just try to merge it and see how it does. Right? I'm trying to understand, like, if you want to reproduce it locally, maybe you need to decrease timeout and try to reoperate to understand what the why it's happening.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. I guess my concern was just like we would be raising the timeout for all tests everywhere. So if it's actually not the issue, then, you know, what's the point of increasing the timeout? But that's another solution we can try. Yeah, I'm not against it.
So you think that what will help is to repair locally and have some? Do we need more logs? So what do we need to investigate?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good to understand why after, you know, like maybe perhaps we can take a look at the CAdvisor logs like in the kubelet. I think the real issue is that the verbosity is kind of low in the logs. So if somebody could repro it, if we could run it locally with higher verbosity logs, maybe we could actually see what's the issue. Maybe it is actually timeout, or maybe there's actually something related to swap that's causing the issue. So perhaps that would be a good thing to try. The other approach is, yeah, we can just try increasing the time and see if it helps. It's kind of the shotgun approach, but also worth trying, perhaps.
Has anybody tried to increase timeout on that, like on test running on test grid? I think there may be too much information. Yeah, there are too many tests. Mike, did you run it locally? Was he able to reproduce?
No, I haven't been able to reproduce it. I'll give it a shot and try with the hyper. I'll try to increase the verbosity of C-advisor.
Yeah, if you've been unable to reproduce it locally and it passes on every other thing, I have a sneaking suspicion that it may just be a performance thing, because locally you probably have pretty fast storage.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when I say locally, I was kind of thinking like using on GCP, using the same job. At least that's when I run. When I'm trying to debug jobs, I try to run them in the same environment.
It's handy to have a GCP account that you can run whatever you want on, huh?
It is useful.
With SSH now, people just running on different machines. Okay. Mike, is it still assigned to you? Do you want to be assigned to you?
Yeah, I can take it. Yeah, I'll try to run it locally with higher verbosity, and if not, I'll just increase it timeout.
Thank you. Oh, we only have 15 minutes left, and we still have a few agenda items. Matthias, you up?
Yeah, I think this one is quick. So basically, when it's about like removing from the pre-submit the Docker-based jobs, and I realized that Daniel moved already all of them in just one job, so I removed it, and then I put Elana in CC, and suddenly it was merged before anybody could have a look. So.
Oh, I didn't even see this one. Well, I thought that they were gone.
Yeah, actually, it was LGTM by Daniel, and then Dims just approved. So I assume it's okay, but I just wanted to raise it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure it's okay. I mean, we can go through and make sure that we're not like this looks like it was just one test.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are more using Docker shim.
But then how do I find them? It's when we set this env Docker.
Yes, anything that has env that's not remote, basically, because it'll default to Docker. Yeah, those were specifically, we had split out some of the serial tests that were like Docker specific last release, so that we could just get rid of them. Yeah, so that one, definitely no issue with that being merged, but I think that's not all of them.
Okay, I will reopen the issue and make sure. So you say when we don't specify kube container runtime equals containerd or cryo, it will be equals to Docker.
Remote, and then we have to set the
remote. Okay, remote.
Anything that's not remote. Yep.
Okay. So okay. I will have a look. I reopen the issue and I will have a look. Thanks.
And what you can do is to just run all pre-submits and like sometime PR and run all the pre-submits and see how they do.
Yeah.
I remember on one of the PRs recently, I started one of the pre-submits and I think it failed this configuration issue. I tried to connect to Docker shim or something. So maybe just run all of them. Yeah, because this test executions may be from past, like, yeah, it's like last year. Okay. Oops. Okay, that's great. So AppArmor issue was fixed. You can check a couple of. Yeah, now it starts. It's swap. Okay, AppArmor fixed. I'll remove this. So this still there. And did you follow up? Do you want to follow up?
Yes, I think I had a PR open for this, but I had like put a hold on it just to make sure that it didn't get merged prematurely, just because I was working on it going out into the break. I haven't had a chance to look at it since last week. Sorry.
Okay.
I was out sick the last 2 days.
Well, last week was crazy week for me as well. C group V2, what was happening there? I think we updated C advisor, but it's still failing. David, you made a comment here. Can you...
Yeah, I'm taking a look into this one to see. I have a possible idea on what's wrong, but still debugging it.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at this comment and I didn't dig deeper. Doesn't mean that we detect containerd PID improperly on all tests, or it's just specific to this one?
So I think like this test is specifically installing custom version of containerd in COS. The other ones I think are using the built-in version, except I think there's one job that's also using the master version. So depending if it's installing custom version of containerd or just using the built-in one, this might work or might not. Yeah, it's my understanding.
I think we have quite a few jobs that test in different versions of containerd, which also needs to install it. But yeah,
I see,
okay.
yeah. I need to look into it. I'm not 100% sure it's the root cause. So it's just one thing I saw. So still need some more debugging on my side.
I will then assign it to you, right?
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
Is Chamin around? No. Still active. Oh, it's okay now. Did you result? Okay, we'll take a look. An eviction tests. It's still red. Yeah, still red. Is issue assigned? No. Okay, we probably need to go to the port triage. So, Mike, you said when you looked at this document, you said that you looked at all the test grid and created this new issue. Is there anything else that needs to be taken care of?
No, I think I mean I only noticed that one. Most of the ones that are already failing, they're already there.
Okay, so no new ones. Then I wouldn't go through the board again. Thank you for watching it for us.
Sure.
All this, yeah, I haven't seen updates on these issues as well. Okay, let's go to the board and see how we're doing, and maybe find owners for some items. First, there is some triage needed. Issue with SSH key. Lana, is it for us or it's for infra?
I asked SIG Infra for help because I think that the key on that cluster is broken, which is preventing us from running cryo tests in that environment. So there's something.
Do you want to be
happening.
assigned to that?
I don't want to be assigned to that because I don't want to be the one to fix it, but somebody needs to fix this. Looks like Ben replied.
Yeah. Okay, they like Ben replied back that it needs more investigation. Any takers?
Yeah, you want to send this to me?
Oh, sorry.
It's Peter.
What commander? Oh, what
Hair
commander?
commander.
Hair commander.
Yeah.
You may well be code commander. What was it called? Sorry for not remembering. Skip test when no signal emitting commands. Yeah, I think I reviewed this one. It's for graceful termination, right? David, I think you also did it.
Yeah, and review this one. I think this was like issue on Cryo or like on Fedora or something where it didn't have some certain command that the other Ubuntu and COS had. So we just skipped the test in that environment.
It already have LGTM, so I will move it to the approver. And do you want to take it or anybody else? Oh, okay, me and Alana can approve, I think. Do you know if test failures are legit?
Is this the graceful shutdown one?
Yeah.
Yep.
To fix it. It was failing on Fedora, I think.
Yes. I am not sure. So I think there was also a PR open in test infra for this one. I mean, I think it's good to do both. Like, it's good to both skip it if it's not supported, but also like the Fedora test should just support this. So I think Peter maybe had a PR open to fix this in test infra. I'm not sure if we want to take both fixes or just the one. I'm not sure why these are failing. I know at some point I reran the test because there was like there was just a typo that was causing the test to fail immediately, but now I'm not sure what's causing them to fail.
Yeah, I did have a PR open a while ago for something. Well, it was to turn on this system DC group test with Cryo. I don't know if that would then Venn diagram with this because I think they're still not started. So I think that this is separate from that.
I think it's a good idea to at least keep it for now, so they're not red. Is there a bug that it fixes? Yeah, especially when there is a bug. And if you want to improve it, we can do it later. Is it still red? Yeah. I can't find a. Ronnie showed me how to get to the grid from it. That's great. Yeah, it's still failing. Yeah, still failing. I think this may fix it. So let's give it a try, and then do we want to keep or create cut a new bug to fix it and switch to other tool to send signals?
Yeah, I think that may make sense. I think I left the comment there on one thing we could do that hopefully could make it a cross-platform working on COS, Ubuntu, Fedora.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, I can make an or I can make an issue for that after the call. No problem.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed that this is assigned, and let's make it into in progress. Yeah, this is a generic refactoring. I think we shouldn't do it in part of this triage.
We have 2 minutes left, which I suspect means we probably won't have time to get to bugs. There was that fellow who brought up a bug yesterday in the node meeting. Do we want to look at that one real quick?
Definitely. That's a good idea. Okay. And it was in agenda.
That one.
I was only listening. This one?
Yeah.
So I'm not
We
sure.
hadn't had a chance to triage it yet.
Interesting. I mean, it sounds like a bug, if it's true.
I'm a little confused because the directory listing said total 24K, but the actual files themselves didn't add up to anything close to that. So looks like there's some back and forth about this.
Okay, so it's CRI specific calculation that is incorrect. Let's see advisor. Okay, let's apply the advisor area. Yeah, based on this this description, I think this is actually a bug in the advisor. I don't think it's it was designed this way. And I assume it was this way for a long time, so I don't want to make it market critical or anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least it definitely looks like it's getting attention. So.
Let me retitle on cryo. This is fair title. Hey, thank you for bringing it up, and I'm really glad that we have such a good attendance. Thank you everybody attending, and happy rest of the week. Bye.
See y'all.
Bye. Thank you.